For weeks I woke up with bruises. My girlfriend said I toss and turn. Last night I set up a camera and saw someone enter at 3:17 a.m. I keep staring at my arms like they belong to somebody else, because for weeks I have been waking up with bruises I cannot explain, and my girlfriend kept brushing it off like I am some dramatic person who cannot accept he sleeps rough. It started small. One morning I noticed a faint mark on my upper arm, like someone had grabbed me, not hard enough to break skin, just hard enough to leave that dull shadow. I assumed I slammed into the bed frame while rolling over. I'm not a graceful sleeper. I have always been the guy who wakes up tangled, pillow on the floor, sheet halfway gone, so I did not say much. Then it happened again and again, and the marks got weirder: inner arm, ribs, the side of my hip, always in places that did not make sense for tossing and turning. Because you do not toss and turn into a bruise on the soft part of your arm unless you are hitting something sharp, and there is nothing sharp in our bed. My girlfriend Maren kept acting like I was inventing a mystery. She would glance at the bruises and do this casual little shrug, then she would say I move a lot when I sleep, then she would say I am stressed, then she would say I should drink more water, like hydration fixes a hand-shaped bruise. We live in an old converted place in Albuquerque, one of those brick buildings that used to be something else, and now it is marketed as industrial charm, exposed beams, long hallways that swallow sound, the kind of place where you can walk from the elevator to your door and not see another person. It is quiet in a way that feels nice until it feels wrong. Maren moved in with me months ago. She was between leases and it made sense. We had been together long enough that it did not feel reckless. I work from home doing back-end support for a logistics company. She does early shifts at a distribution center across town, so our schedules overlap just enough to feel like a normal couple. Dinner sometimes, sleep at the same time sometimes, passing each other in the morning like it is a... The bruises started right after her schedule shifted earlier. She began leaving before sunrise and I started staying up later because my sleep got thrown off. I would hear the building settle, the pipes knock, the distant elevator motor, and then I would finally drift off and wake up feeling like I got into a silent argument I cannot remember. At first it was just the bruises, then it was the other stuff, waking up with my arm numb like it was positioned wrong for too long, waking up with a dry mouth like I had been breathing through my mouth all night, waking up with that heavy groggy feeling that does not match my normal tired, the kind where your thoughts feel delayed, like you are listening to yourself through a wall. I asked Maren if she had noticed anything at night, like me getting up, sleepwalking, hitting the nightstand. She told me no, and she said I should stop spiraling, and she said it with that annoyed tone that makes you feel like you are failing a basic social test. The thing is, I was not even accusing her of anything at that point. I was asking for help solving it because it was my body, my sleep, my bruises, but she kept turning it into me attacking her, like the only way she knows how to respond to uncertainty is to defend herself from it. One morning I woke up with a bruise on my wrist that looked like a band, and my first thought was that maybe I had slept with my watch too tight, except I do not wear my watch to bed. It stays on the dresser always. I looked at it right there in its spot, and I sat up slowly because I felt this sudden wave of cold, like the bruise did not just look wrong. It felt wrong, like it was placed, like it had intention. I texted Maren a photo, not dramatic, just a picture with a short message asking if she can stop telling me I toss and turn. Because this is not normal. She came home that afternoon and barely glanced at it. She told me bruises happen. She told me I am at a desk all day and probably bump into things. Then she said something that made my stomach flip. She said maybe I bruise easy because I am getting older. And she said it with this little laugh like she was joking, but her eyes were flat. I am not old. I am in my late 20s. I am not fragile. I do not bruise from air. That night, I lay awake waiting for sleep like it was an appointment because I wanted to catch myself doing something. If I was flailing or rolling into the frame, I wanted proof, so I could stop thinking about it. I heard Maren breathing next to me steady, and I eventually drifted off. I woke up around the middle of the night to a sound that did not register at first, like a soft click, then the faintest brush of fabric. And I stayed still because my brain was slow, but my body was alert. I remember thinking it sounded like the front door, except the bedroom is down a narrow hall and you cannot normally hear the lock from there. Then I felt something near my arm, not pain, pressure, like fingers on the inside of my bicep, and my heart kicked hard enough that I felt it in my throat. I wanted to jerk away, but my muscles felt thick, slow, like the message from my brain got stuck halfway. I did not open my eyes. I do not even know why. Maybe instinct, maybe fear, maybe I was not fully awake, but I remember holding my breath and I remember the pressure released, and then I heard a soft footstep move away, and another, and then nothing. When I woke up for real in the morning, there was a fresh bruise exactly where I felt that pressure. And this time it was not subtle, it was dark and unmistakable. And I just sat there staring at it until Maren got out of the shower. She glanced at me like she already knew what I was going to say. And before I could speak, she told me I had to stop. She told me I'm scaring myself. She told me I should not make up things because I am stressed. I asked her if she got up last night. She said no, and she said she sleeps like a rock. She said I am the restless one, and she said maybe I dreamed it. And she looked at the bruise and said it is just a bruise, like she was talking to a kid who scraped a knee. That was the moment I decided I needed something that does not argue back. I'm not a camera person, I do not have a Ring doorbell. I do not have smart home stuff all over the place, but I do have an old phone in a drawer and I have a little tripod from a work thing. And I have a free motion detection app that can record when it senses movement. So I set it up on the top shelf of the closet facing the bedroom door, tucked behind folded clothes so it would not be obvious. I tested it, it caught me walking in, it timestamped the clip, it worked. Marin saw me messing with something in the closet and asked what I was doing. I told her I was organizing and she did not push, but she watched me longer than usual like she was taking a mental note. That night, I went to bed earlier on purpose. I wanted to be asleep by the time she was because I wanted to see what happens when I am not alert. I did not tell her about the camera because I did not want her to change her behavior and because I hate that I even thought she might. I remember falling asleep and feeling that same thick heaviness like my body sank too fast. I remember thinking I should not feel that tired, then everything blurred. I woke up in the morning with my mouth dry, my head foggy, and my arm sore, and my first thought was the phone. I slid out of bed quietly, and I pulled it from the closet shelf with shaking hands, because even before I watched it, I knew there would be something on it. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. There were multiple clips, short ones at first, me rolling, Marin shifting, a car passing outside, then one clip that started at exactly 3:17 in the morning. The bedroom door opened slowly like someone knew how to keep a hinge quiet, a sliver of hallway light cut across the floor. And a figure stepped in, not stumbling, not confused, purposeful. They wore a dark hoodie, hood up, and they moved like they had done it before. They paused just inside the doorway and they turned their head like they were checking the room, then they came toward my side of the bed. Marin did not move, not at all, which is the part that hit me hardest, because if a stranger came into your bedroom, most people flinch, they stir, they react, but she was completely still, almost too still. The figure leaned over me and I saw a hand come down toward my arm and my skin crawled even watching it. Then the hand pressed into the same spot where the bruises keep showing up, like they were checking something, squeezing, testing. Then the figure pulled my arm outward, not violently but firmly, and for a second my shoulder shifted and I could tell it would hurt later. Then the figure did something I still cannot fully explain without feeling sick. They held my wrist like they were looking at it, like they were making sure of something, then they let go and they backed away and they left the room and the door closed. The whole thing lasted maybe half a minute, and in that half minute my sense of safety got erased. I watched it 3 times because my brain kept trying to reject it, like maybe I saw wrong, maybe it was a trick of light, maybe it was Marin sleepwalking, but it was not. The height, the shape, the movement, it was someone else and the timestamp was right there. I did not scream, I did not throw the phone, I just sat on the edge of the bed with my heart slamming and this weird buzzing in my hands, and I looked at Marin sleeping next to me, and I had the thought that she was either the heaviest sleeper on earth or she knew. When she woke up and saw my face, she asked what is wrong, annoyed already, like she was bracing for another conversation she considers inconvenient. I told her I set up a camera and I told her someone came into our bedroom at 3:17 and I told her they touched me while I was asleep and I watched her face. There was a flicker, just a flicker, like the moment before someone decides which mask to put on. Then she got angry, not scared, angry. She asked why I put a camera in the bedroom. She asked if I was spying on her. She asked what is wrong with me. She asked if I am trying to catch her doing something. I told her I do not care about anything except the fact that someone entered our place, and she said it is probably the building. She said maintenance sometimes checks things. She said I am being paranoid again. She said why would someone come in just to touch me? I showed her the clip and she watched it once and then she did something I did not expect. She shrugged and she said it could be the super checking the lock, and she said I am making it creepy by calling it creepy. I asked her if she gave someone a key and she stared at me too long, then she said no, and she said I am accusing her, and she said she cannot live like this, and she stormed into the bathroom and shut the door. I stood there listening to the shower turn on and my whole body felt like it was vibrating because the clip was real and her reaction was wrong and the bruises were real and the bruises were on me. I did not go to work. I sat at my desk and rewound that clip until my eyes ached. I zoomed in, the hoodie was plain, the face was hidden, but the shoes stood out. They were scuffed at the toes in a very specific way, like someone drags their feet slightly when they walk. I went to the front door and checked the lock. It was locked, no damage, no forced entry, which meant somebody had a way in. The building has those coded fobs for the main entrance, but our unit door is a physical key and the only keys should be mine and Marin, and the building office keeps a master, at least that is what they say, but they also claim they do not enter without notice unless it is an emergency. I called the building office and the person who answered said they have no record of emergency entry for our unit, and they sounded confused, and they told me if someone entered without notice I should call the police, and when I said I have video they got quiet, then they told me the manager is not in, then they told me they would call back. Marin came out of the bathroom dressed for work and she acted like nothing happened. She said she cannot be late. She said we can talk later. She kissed my cheek like a routine, and then she left. I watched her go, and for the first time in the relationship I felt this pure clean separation in my head, like the person leaving the apartment was not my partner, it was a variable. I took my phone, took the old phone with the clip, and I went downstairs to the building office in person because I needed faces, I needed accountability, I needed someone to tell me I am not losing it. The manager was there, a guy named Hollies, and he did that professional smile while his eyes scanned me. I told him someone entered my unit at 3:17. I told him I have video, and I told him I want to know who has keys and who accessed the building at that time. He said they do not have a log for unit keys, and he said they cannot track individual movements like that, and he said maybe it was someone with a spare, and he said I should change my locks if I am worried. Change my locks like that is just a normal thing to do because a stranger came into your bedroom. I asked him if any staff did a check. He said no. He said they would document it if they did, and he asked if I have enemies, like this is a personal issue, not a security issue in his building. I left shaking because he either did not care or he was lying, and both possibilities were bad. I called the police, and the dispatcher asked if the person is still in the unit. I said no, this happened overnight. I have video evidence of an unknown person entering and approaching me while I slept, and there have been repeated unexplained bruises, and she told me an officer would come take a report. While I waited, I walked through the apartment checking everything like I was trying to find the part of reality that makes sense. Nothing obvious was missing, no drawers dumped, no electronics gone, which made it worse because if it was a typical break-in, at least there is a motive you can name. This felt like someone testing something, or someone sending a message, or someone doing something that made sense to them, not to me. The officer arrived, she watched the clip, her expression changed in that small controlled way people have when they see something they did not expect. She asked if I know anyone who would do this. I said no. She asked if the person took anything. I said not that I can tell. She asked if I have been having sleep issues. I said yes, and I told her about the bruises. She asked if I want to request extra patrols. She told me to change the locks. She told me to add cameras if possible, and she said they can take the report. But if the intruder is unidentified, it can be hard unless there is a clear face or a license plate or the person comes back and is caught. She also asked if I feel safe with my girlfriend, and the way she said it was careful, like she did not want to start something, and I told her I do not know what to think, and she nodded like she has heard that answer before too. After she left, I sat on the floor of the hallway with my back against the wall, and I realized the worst part is not the clip. It is the way Marin reacted, because if she was genuinely scared, we would be united, we would be angry together, we would be locking things down together. But she made it about me spying, she made it about my paranoia, she made it about her comfort. That night, I did not sleep. I stayed up on the couch with the lights off, I watched the door, I listened to the building sounds, and I kept thinking about that moment on the video when the figure paused in the doorway, like they were checking if I was asleep enough. At some point close to morning, my phone buzzed. It was Marin. She said she is staying at a coworker's place because she needs space. She said she cannot deal with my distrust right now. She said we will talk when I calm down. I stared at her message and felt something in me go quiet, not relief, not acceptance, just a kind of blank, because she was leaving me alone in the apartment where someone entered at 3:17 and she was acting like I was the threat. I packed a bag, grabbed the old phone, grabbed my laptop, and I left the apartment and went to my cousin Satcha's place across town, not because I wanted comfort, but because I needed a second set of eyes on the video, and because I could not be alone in that unit another night. Satcha watched the clip once and immediately asked why Marin did not move, and when someone else said that out loud it made my stomach twist harder because it meant I am not crazy for noticing it. Satcha told me to save the clip in multiple places, and she told me to stop talking to Marin except in person, and she told me to take the video to the building owner if the manager is dismissive, and she said this is not normal, not even a little. I sat there in her living room watching the clip again, and I paused it at the moment the figure stepped back, and Satcha leaned in and said, "Those shoes look like the maintenance guy's shoes, the one who always drags his feet, the one who fixes the elevator." I asked her how she knows, and she said because she has lived in buildings like this, and because she pays attention, and because that dragging sound is distinctive, and she said she has heard it in the hallway more than once late at night. That was the first real lead, and it made me feel both better and worse. Better because it gave shape to the threat. Worse because it meant someone with access, someone whose job gives them cover, might be entering units at night. I went back to the building the next day with Satcha, not to confront anybody dramatically, but because I wanted to walk into that office with another person, someone who would notice what I notice, someone who would not let them brush me off. Hollies was there again, and when he saw me with Satcha his posture changed, and I could tell he clocked her as someone who will not get charmed by a calm voice. I told him I filed a police report, I told him I have video evidence, and I told him I want the owner contact information and the staff roster for anyone with after-hours access. Holly's told me they cannot just hand over staff info. He told me it is private. He told me they take safety seriously. Then he tried to steer the conversation back into suggesting I should just change my locks and move on. Sacha asked him, very calmly, why a tenant should have to change locks because building security might be compromised. And she asked if there are any internal key controls, and she asked if the maintenance staff carries master keys, and she asked if those keys are ever checked out and logged. Holly's got defensive, then he got vague, then he got careful. He said keys are managed appropriately. He said emergencies happen. He said they would never enter without reason. He said if I have concerns, I should email the owner. Email, the one thing that leaves a trail for them to control, the one thing they can ignore for days. I did not say that, but I felt it. I asked him directly if any maintenance staff member named Taryn is on shift overnight because I had heard the name in the hallway before and I watched his eyes, and he did not answer immediately. He asked why I am asking, and I said because someone entered my unit at 3:17 and the shoes and gait match what I have seen from maintenance. Holly's told me he cannot discuss staffing, but he said he would speak to his team, and he said he would get back to me. We left, and Sacha told me he is hiding something, and I knew she was right, but knowing it did not fix it, because I still did not know why someone would enter, why they would touch my arm, why the bruises kept happening, and why Marin acted like I was the problem. I went back to Sacha Place and finally checked my bank app, not because I thought it mattered, but because my brain needed to check something, and I noticed a couple of small withdrawals from an ATM I never use, not huge, just small enough that you might miss them if you are not watching closely, and the timestamps were always early morning, always around the same general window. I do not use ATMs in the early morning and I do not carry my card to bed, but then I remembered something. A few weeks ago Marin had teased me for always keeping my wallet in the same place, and she had said I am predictable and she had laughed like it was cute. My wallet sits in the same bowl on the counter every night because I like habits, and suddenly that habit felt like a liability. I froze my cards, changed my account password, and felt that cold anger start to replace the fog, because now there was a motive that looked like money, and if money is involved, then the touching, the bruises, the strange heaviness when I sleep, it all started to point in one direction I did not want to name. I called Marin, she did not answer. I called again, she still did not answer. So I drove back to the apartment in the middle of the day with Sacha in the passenger seat, and I used my key, and the first thing I noticed was the smell of cleaning product in the hallway, like someone had scrubbed something. And the second thing I noticed was that my wallet bowl was not in the exact place it always is, it was shifted slightly, like someone moved it and tried to move it back. Sacha looked at me and said quietly that this is not just Bruises anymore, this is someone treating my home like it is theirs. I packed more clothes, grabbed my important documents, and left again because whatever was happening, I was not sleeping in that unit until I knew who walked in at 3:17 and why. Update 10 days later. The last 10 days have been this weird mix of waiting and scrambling, like I am trying to live a normal day while also building a case around the fact that someone touched me while I was asleep, because if you say it out loud people either get serious immediately or they smile like you are telling a ghost story. The police report went nowhere at first, which I kind of expected. They told me they would add it to their system. They told me to call if it happens again, and I wanted to scream because the whole point is I do not want it to happen again, but I kept it together because yelling does not create evidence. I kept thinking about the bruises and I started paying attention to my body like it was a crime scene. That sounds dramatic, but that is what it felt like. I would wake up at Sacha Place and check my arms automatically, and the bruises started fading, which should have been comforting, but it also made something click, because the bruises only happened when I slept in my apartment with Mare. The heaviness, the dry mouth, the fog, it was gone too. I felt like myself again, and that made me angry in a clean, focused way because it meant it was not in my head. Something about that apartment, that routine, that environment was doing it. Sacha pushed me to talk to the building owner directly, not through Holly's, and she helped me find the property management company that owns the building. I called their main line and asked for a supervisor. I said I filed a police report. I have video evidence of unauthorized entry, and the on-site manager is dismissive, and I need immediate action. The supervisor, a woman named Juno, called me back a few hours later, and she sounded irritated before I even spoke, like her day was already full. But then I sent her the clip and her tone changed. She asked if I have the original file, she asked if I can provide the report number, she asked if I can meet her on-site, and she asked if I can confirm whether I gave anyone access. I told her only Marin has a key besides me and building management, and I told her Marin is currently staying elsewhere, and I told her she reacted strangely when I showed her the clip, and Juno paused, then she said okay, and she said do not discuss this with on-site staff until she arrives, because she wants to handle it properly. Properly is not a word I expected to hear from anyone involved in this so far. I met Juno in the building office 2 days later, and Holly's was there too, and you could tell he did not like that his boss was in his space. He kept trying to talk over her like he could regain control by filling the air, but Juno shut it down fast. She asked to see the master key log, and Holly's hesitated. Then he said they do not keep a written log, and Juno stared at him like he just said he does not lock the front door. She asked who has master keys. Holly's tried to give a vague answer about authorized personnel, and Juno told him she wants names, she wants schedules, and she wants to see every master key in the office safe. While she did that, she asked me to walk her through what I experienced, and I told her about the bruises and the clip and the timestamp, and I told her about my girlfriend insisting it was just tossing and turning, and I told her the bruises stopped when I stopped sleeping there. Juno did not react like I was crazy, she reacted like she was assembling a timeline. Then she did something I did not expect. She asked if there are any cameras in the hallway on my floor. I told her there are not. The building is lazy about that. They have one in the lobby and one near the package lockers, but nothing upstairs. She asked about the elevator, and Holly said the elevator has no camera, and Juno looked like she was trying not to swear. She told me they can change my unit lock immediately at their cost, and she told me they will rekey the whole master system if necessary. And she told me to send her any bank irregularities, any suspicious activity, anything that can show harm beyond the entry itself. That last part mattered because it meant she knows how these cases get minimized. She knows you need impact, not just creepiness. That same afternoon, Holly's called me, not from the office line, from his personal cell, which already felt wrong. He told me we should talk privately. He told me he wants to smooth things over. He told me he does not want me making accusations that could hurt good employees. Good employees do not enter at 3:17. I told him I am not meeting him privately. I told him everything goes through Juno, and he got tense, and he said I am making a mistake. And he said sometimes tenants misunderstand policy, and he said if I keep pushing, renewals can get complicated. There it was, the threat, wrapped in admin language. I told Juno, and she asked me to forward the call record if possible, and she told me not to engage, and she said she will address it. That night I finally confronted Marin in person, not at the apartment, not in a dramatic doorstep situation, but at a neutral place where we could talk without me worrying she would take something or flip something. I asked her directly if she gave a key to anyone. She said no. She said I am obsessed. She said I am trying to turn her into a villain because I cannot handle being vulnerable. I told her the bruises stopped when I stopped sleeping in that apartment, and her face tightened, and she said that proves nothing. And she said maybe Satya is feeding my paranoia. Then I asked her about the ATM withdrawals, and this time she did not get angry. She got careful. She asked what withdrawals. She asked why I am checking my accounts. She asked if I am hiding something. I told her I froze my cards, and I told her the withdrawals happened early morning on nights I slept at home. And I watched her eyes because people can control their mouths, but their eyes do not always cooperate. She said I am accusing her of stealing, and she said that is insulting, and she said if I really believe that, then we should take a break. A break like this is a relationship disagreement, not a security issue where someone entered the bedroom. I asked her one more thing. I asked her why she did not move when someone entered the room, and she snapped and said I do not know what you are talking about. And then she said maybe I did move and the camera did not catch it, and she said I am not going to sit here while you dissect how I sleep. I asked her if she has taken anything from my wallet, and she stood up so fast her chair scraped, and she told me I am humiliating her. She told me she cannot believe I am doing this, and she walked away. I sat there feeling like I had just watched someone exit a scene in their head, not in reality, like she had a script for how this should go, and I ruined it by asking the wrong question. The next day, Juno called and told me they identified the maintenance worker who matches the height and build in the clip, and his name is Taran, and she told me he is a contract worker, not a full employee, and she told me his access should be limited, but the on-site office has been letting him hold a master key during late repairs without logging it, and she sounded furious. She asked if I would be willing to come in and sign a statement for internal action. I said yes, and I went down there and I wrote exactly what happened. And while I was there, another tenant came in complaining about missing cash, and the timing was so sharp it felt unreal, like the building itself was finally cracking open. Juno told me they suspended Taran access immediately, and they told him not to return pending investigation. She told me they are rekeying locks on multiple units, and she told me they are cooperating with police. And she asked me again if I am safe from any interpersonal angle, like she was trying to be polite about asking if my girlfriend is involved. I told her I do not know, but I do not trust her reaction, and Juno went quiet. Then she said something that made my chest tighten. She said Taran listed an emergency contact on his contract paperwork, and the name was Marin Quinn. My girlfriend. I had to ask her to repeat it because my brain refused the sentence. Juno repeated it. She said the phone number matches the one on file for my unit, and she said she cannot legally share everything, but she is telling me because it directly intersects with my safety. I walked out of that office feeling like the building hallway was tilting, because now it was no longer a vague suspicion, now there was a documented connection between Marin and the person who entered at 3:17. I called Marin immediately, she did not answer. I called again, nothing. I sent one message telling her I know she is listed as his contact, and I told her I am going to the police with that information. She replied hours later with one sentence. She said I am making things worse and I need to stop before I regret it. I did not reply. I took my evidence, the video, the report number, the bank logs, Juno written note about the contact listing, and I went to the police station and asked to add it to the report. The officer who took my update watched the clip again, asked for the additional details, and this time the tone was different because now there was a named suspect, a documented connection, and a pattern of suspected theft. And when the system finally recognizes a pattern, people start moving. I went back to Sacha Place that night and slept, and I still woke up in the middle of the night. But this time it was just my own body, no bruises, no heaviness, just the aftermath of finally knowing that 3:17 was not a nightmare, it was a person with a key. Update 3 weeks later. I thought the worst part would be getting proof, but the worst part was realizing how many people can touch your life if they have access, and how easy it is for them to make you feel like you are the problem for noticing. The police contacted me a few days after I added the new information. They asked me to come in for a more formal statement, and they asked if I would consent to providing the original device file from the old phone because they wanted metadata intact. I gave it to them, and I watched the detective copy it like it was just another file, and I had to remind myself that for them it is a file. For me it is the moment a stranger leaned over my bed. They also asked if I had any reason to believe I was drugged, and that question made my stomach drop, because it meant they saw the same thing I saw, the heaviness, the fog, the way my body felt delayed, and I told them I do not have proof. But I told them it felt wrong, and I told them the bruises stopped when I stopped sleeping there. The detective told me they cannot test feelings, they can test samples, and he asked if I had any leftover drinks or anything from the nights in question. I did not, because who keeps a glass of water from 3 weeks ago, so that line of proof was gone, and I felt stupid for not realizing sooner that my normal habits could be used against me. While police did their part, Juno and the property management company did theirs, and that part moved faster because buildings do not like liability. They rekeyed the master system, they changed on-site policy, they required logging, and they terminated Hollies, which I did not expect. But apparently there were other complaints, and my report was the thing that made the company finally pull the Taryn disappeared the moment his access was cut. He did not come back to argue, he did not show up to plead innocence. He just vanished, and that made me more nervous because when someone disappears, it means they know what they did and they know what evidence could do. Marin stayed silent too, until she did not. She showed up at my cousin's place one afternoon, not knocking like a normal person but waiting by the sidewalk like she knew Sacha would not let her in without asking. She looked tired, hair pulled back, eyes sharp, and she started with the same line she always uses when she wants control. She said, "We need to talk like adults." Sacha stood at the doorway and told her I do not owe her a conversation, and Marin looked at her like she was gum on a shoe. Then she looked at me and said she can explain everything. I told her to explain why she is listed as Taryn Contact, and she said she met him through a coworker. She said he offered to help with a stuck lock weeks ago. She said she did not think it was a big deal to be listed as a contact because he did small jobs for people. She said I am twisting it into something darker. I asked her if she gave him a key. She said no. She said he had building access anyway, and she said she did not think he would do anything weird. And then she said something that made my skin crawl. She said maybe he thought it was okay because he knew me through her. As if knowing her grants permission to enter my bedroom. I asked her why she acted angry when I showed her the clip, and she said because she felt violated by the camera. She said she hates being recorded, and she said I should have told her, and she said I was basically treating her like a suspect, and she said it triggered her. Triggered, that word dropped like a shield, because it is a word that ends conversations if you let it, but I did not let it. I asked her why she did not act scared about a stranger in the room, and she told me she did not see it as a stranger. She told me she assumed it was maintenance, and she said she did not want to feed my paranoia. Feed my paranoia like the correct response to unauthorized entry is to stay calm and not make a fuss. Then she switched tactics, she started crying. But it was the kind of cry where the tears come fast and the voice stays controlled. She said she was trying to help me. She said she thought I was stressed. She said she thought the bruises were from sleep. She said she never wanted me to feel unsafe. I asked her why she left that night, why she stayed elsewhere and left me alone in that apartment after we saw the clip, and she said she could not handle my accusations. She said I was scaring her. She said she needed space. And then she said the thing she probably did not mean to say out loud. She said I should be grateful she did not call anyone when I started acting unstable. I stared at her because that sentence was not about fear, it was about leverage, like she was reminding me she can control how I am perceived, she can turn my reaction into a story about me. Satya told her to leave and Marin wiped her face, looked at me, and said this is not over, then she walked away like she had delivered a final line. 2 nights later I got a call from the detective. He told me they found Taran not in some dramatic way, but because his car was identified in another complaint, another building, another tenant, same pattern, and once police see repetition, they moved differently. He told me they brought him in for questioning, and he told me Taran admitted to entering units without permission. The detective did not tell me everything, but he told me enough to make my stomach turn. He told me Taran said he chose units where he had some social connection, like he wanted a reason to justify the entry in his own head. He told me Taran claimed he was checking on things, but the pattern included theft, and he told me there were allegations of assault, and he told me my case was part of a larger file now. Then the detective asked me again if I believe Marin was involved, and I told him I do not know what she did, but I know she minimized it, I know she is listed as his contact, I know she had a key, and I know the bruises only happened when she was in the apartment with me. The detective asked if Marin ever handled my drinks, and I told him she makes me tea sometimes, and even saying that felt stupid, because now every normal couple habit gets repainted into suspicion. Few days after that, Juno called me and told me something that made everything click in a way that made me feel both sick and furious. She said when they reviewed Holly's office paperwork, they found that a spare key to my unit had been checked out unofficially to Marin on a day she claimed she lost her key, and the reason it was not in the system is because Holly's never logged it in the official way. He wrote it on a sticky note and tucked it in a drawer. Marin had a spare beyond what I knew, and she had it from the building office, and that meant she could hand it to someone without me noticing, and she could still use the excuse that the building has access anyway. I drove to the police station and gave them that detail, and the detective thanked me in that flat professional tone. Then he said they are looking at Marin as a potential facilitator, and he asked if I want to file for a protective order. That question hit me in a weird way because it was the first time someone in authority framed Marin as the problem out loud. Not my paranoia, not my stress, not my overreaction, but her actions. I filed for the protective order not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted distance on paper. I wanted a boundary that does not require arguing, and the court granted a temporary order pending a hearing. When Marin was served, she exploded. She did not call, she did not text. She showed up at my workplace building, not inside, but outside near the entrance where people take smoke breaks and wait for rides, and she stood there staring until I walked out. She told me I ruined her life. She told me I am making her look like a criminal. She told me she never told Taran to hurt me. She told me she only asked him to check on me because I was stressed and she was worried. Check on me at 3:17 in my bedroom with her staying perfectly still while it happened. I asked her why she would ever ask someone to check on me while I slept, and she got this cold look and said because sometimes you scare me when you sleep, and she said you do not remember what you do, and she said I was trying to protect myself. I told her that is a lie, and she leaned closer and said it is not a lie, it is just a version you do not like. That was the moment I realized she was building a narrative, not truth, and she had been doing it for weeks, turning bruises into my fault, turning fear into my instability, turning her secrecy into my paranoia. The protective order hearing happened a week later, and Marin tried to present herself as the worried girlfriend. She told the judge I was having sleep issues. She told the judge I was stressed. She told the judge she asked a friend in maintenance to check the lock because she felt unsafe. And she told the judge she never expected him to enter the bedroom. Then my attorney played the clip in court, and the judge watched the figure enter at 3:17, watched him approach my side of the bed, watched him touch my arm, watched Marin stay completely still, and the judge asked Marin why she did not react, and Marin said she was asleep. The judge asked how she can claim she did not expect him to enter the bedroom when the person did, and she did not wake. And the judge asked why she did not tell me she requested a spare key, and Marin did not have a clean answer. She tried to pivot, and the judge stopped her and asked again, and Marin's voice got smaller and said she did not think it mattered. The protective order was extended, and the judge also ordered that Marin have no contact with me and no presence at my workplace. And when the order was read out loud, Marin's face went flat, like she stopped performing, like she was already moving on to whatever story she will tell next. Final update 6 weeks later. Marin was not charged as a direct participant in every action, but she was charged with facilitation tied to access, because of the spare key, because of the contact listing, and because she admitted she asked him to check on me, and the detective told me their working theory was that she wanted leverage. She wanted someone inside my space who could rattle me without leaving obvious fingerprints, and she wanted a way to keep me second-guessing myself while she took what she could without me noticing. The detective did not say it in a dramatic way. He said it like he had seen it before. He said once someone can convince you that your own senses are unreliable, they can do almost anything around you, and your brain will do half the work for them by trying to explain it away. Hearing that made me feel sick, because it lined up too cleanly with what Marin kept doing. Every time I pointed at something real, she acted like the problem was my reaction, not the thing itself. She kept steering everything back toward me being unstable, me being paranoid, me being the guy who cannot handle stress. And while I was busy fighting for my own sanity, someone was coming in at 3:17 like it was a routine. The bruises finally made sense too, the detective said in other reports. Taryn would grab people while they slept, not always to injure them badly, sometimes it was just enough to leave marks that create confusion. The report language was clinical, but the meaning was simple. The bruises were a tool, not an accident. The part that people keep asking me about, the drugging, ended up being the hardest thing to prove, because there was no saved cup, no saved bottle, and by the time I understood what might be happening, I had already stopped sleeping there, so I did not have a way to capture it in a clean test. Still, the detective asked if I would be willing to do a basic medical exam anyway, not because it would prove what happened weeks ago, but because the bruising pattern and the fog symptoms raised enough concern that they wanted it documented. I did it. The doctor looked at the photos I had taken on my own phone over the weeks, and he wrote notes about the location and the repeated occurrence. He also asked if anyone had been restricting my arm or wrist during sleep, and that question landed heavy. Because it sounded like he was trying to say what nobody wants to say out loud. A few days after that, the detective told me they had pulled video from the lobby camera for the night of the 3:17 entry. The lobby camera does not show my floor, but it does show who comes in and out of the building, and it showed Taryn entering through the staff door and riding the elevator up, then coming back down later. The timestamp window matched the clip I had. And it was the first time the case stopped being my word plus a bedroom clip and became multiple independent pieces that lined up. It also showed something else. Marin entering the building earlier that night when she claimed she was already asleep in bed. She came in alone, she used her fob, and she carried a small tote bag, not a purse, a tote, like she had been out and came back with something she did not want to carry openly during the day. When the detective told me that, I just sat there staring at the wall in his office, because my brain immediately replayed all those moments where she acted like she was the steady one and I was the dramatic one, and now there was a timestamp showing she lied about where she was, on the exact night a stranger came into my bedroom. I asked the detective if that means she is going to be charged with more, and he told me they do not stack things until they can support them. He said they were building a picture, and he said sometimes the cleanest cases are not the ones that include every possible bad thing, they are the ones that include the parts you can prove beyond argument. The building management side of this ended up moving like a stampede once Juno got involved. She gave me a writ release from my lease without penalty. She offered to relocate me to another unit in a different building they manage. And she also offered to pay for a hotel for a short period while locks were rekeyed and staff changes were made. I did not take the relocation offer, because the idea of living under the same management again made my skin crawl, but I did take the hotel for a few nights. Because I needed one place in the world where nobody had keys except the front desk, and even then you can wedge the door and hear the hallway. Sacha came with me when I went back to the unit to get the rest of my stuff. I did not do it alone. I did not want that apartment to have one more night where I felt like prey. We went in during daylight, and it still felt wrong. The air felt stale in a way I had not noticed before, like I was only now smelling what my body had been reacting to for weeks. Nothing looked ransacked, which is still bizarre to me because the violation was not chaos, it was control. Someone came in and left things mostly as they were, because they did not want me to notice. They wanted the bruises and the fog to feel like my own body betraying me. I found small things that made me want to throw up. My wallet bowl was back in its usual place, but there was a faint ring of something sticky inside the bowl like it had been wiped quickly. My nightstand drawer had a crease in the liner paper that was not there before, and my spare set of keys, the ones I rarely touch, were not where I keep them. They were still in the drawer but shifted like someone checked them and put them back slightly wrong. Sacha kept pointing out these tiny off details, and it made me realize how much my own brain had been trying to minimize for me, because noticing everything is exhausting, and when someone is steadily making you tired, you stop noticing, you stop questioning, you start living on autopilot because autopilot hurts less. Marin did not come back to the unit while we packed. She did not show up crying or yelling. She kept her distance, and at first that scared me because distance can mean planning, but then the detective told me she had already been advised to stop contacting me because of the protective order, and there had been a warning call logged after her workplace confrontation, so she was being watched more closely than she realized. The case moved to court faster than I expected, not because the system is fast, but because there were multiple victims, multiple reports, and the building management company had dumped a pile of internal documentation onto the investigators once they realized their own exposure contracts, schedules, call logs, key access policies, the sticky note key checkout, all the things that look boring until they are the spine of a case. Taryn took a plea deal. The detective told me that was typical when someone is caught in a pattern with multiple complainants. The details of the plea were not entertainment, it was just grim. He pled guilty to unlawful entry and theft across multiple incidents, and there were additional charges tied to another victim that did not involve me. Those were handled separately, and I did not ask for details because my brain already had enough images to carry. Marin tried to fight longer, and this is where the twist that finally collapsed her came out, because she kept insisting she only asked him to check the lock. She kept insisting she did not know he was entering. She kept insisting she was asleep, and she kept trying to frame the camera as the real violation. Then the detective showed her the lobby footage with timestamps, and she had to explain why she came back to the building late at night with that tote bag. And she also had to explain why her phone location data placed her outside the building around the same time Taryn came in, because investigators had obtained location information as part of the broader case. Her story changed, then changed again, then she stopped giving a story and started bargaining. In the end, she pled to a lesser charge related to providing access, not a full dramatic confession, just her attorney negotiating a deal that would keep her out of jail if she complied with probation terms, paid restitution tied to what was taken from my accounts, and stayed away from me completely. The restitution number was not massive, but seeing it as a printed figure made my chest tight, because it meant the small ATM withdrawals were not in my head either. They were tracked, they were total. They were real money taken while I slept. The protective order was made long-term. The judge did not play around with it. He said unauthorized access plus documented financial theft plus the video evidence created an obvious ongoing risk. And he set strict no-contact terms, no third-party contact, no workplace contact, no appearing at my residence. And he also ordered that she surrender any remaining copies of keys or access devices tied to me or the building. And yes, that included the fob. Because the building management confirmed she had obtained a replacement through Holly's that was never properly logged. I sat in court listening to all of that and I did not feel victorious. I felt emptied out, like my body had been running on adrenaline for weeks and now the adrenaline was leaving and all that was left was a dry kind of tired. After court, Marin did not try to talk to me. She did not even look at me. She walked out with her attorney like she was late for a dentist appointment. And that coldness did something weird in my head, because it finally snapped the last thread of me wanting her to be a good person who made a mistake. She was not that. She was someone who watched my fear grow and used it. The last loose end, the thing I cared about more than I expected, was making sure my name was not tied to that apartment anymore in any way that lets someone pull strings. Juno provided a letter confirming my lease termination. I got a confirmation from the utility company that my service was closed. I changed every password I could think of. I replaced my debit card. I replaced my credit card. I set alerts for everything. And I put a fraud freeze with the major credit bureaus because the detective told me that in cases involving access and stealth, identity theft sometimes comes later, like a parting gift. I also replaced my phone, not because the phone was compromised, but because I could not stand looking at it without thinking about the clip, and I backed up the original file to a secure drive that I keep in a locked case at such a place. Because the one thing this taught me is that evidence should not live in one location, and your sense of safety should not rely on one object. People keep asking what I did that they never expected, like I pulled some dramatic stunt, but the truth is the unexpected thing was boring. It was me not accepting the narrative Marin was feeding me. It was me quietly collecting proof, escalating to people who are forced to respond when liability shows up, and refusing to be alone with the problem until it got acknowledged as real. The bruises are gone now, my sleep is not perfect, I still wake up too easily, I still check the door without thinking, but the fog feeling is gone, and when I wake up, it feels like my body belongs to me again, and that is the part I did not realize I was losing until it came back.